Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm Sana Maqbool and you're watching Pakistan TV. And here are the top stories that we'll be talking about in the show today. The first, of course, is the landmark deal that has been agreed between Israel and Hamas. And that's the first phase of this deal. And it has been met with a lot of celebration across the world, including in Palestine as well. There is cautious optimism as well. And there is the Israeli government's approval that still remains. But it seems that it's likely and it's something that will at least move forward with an immediate ceasefire and prisoner exchange. There are other aspects of the deal which still remain, but this is something that has been lauded, of course, by President Trump and other leaders around the world as a welcome step to end the suffering of the people of Palestine. It is the first of many, but let's see what happens next. In our next story, we're going to be taking a look at the very important surge in gold prices, a record high crossing $4,000 per ounce. And that's a very important mark in terms of where the world is heading and why it is so. Whether or not that's something that is because of the kind of investor confidence that we're seeing in the dollar. Are there going to be alternate routes that are going to be explored by regional players? Of course, there are sanctions on Russia, which are also adding to the problems. And so what needs to be done on this front, and whether or not U.S. politics is going to be able to help in this regard and the impact that that creates on the world economy. In our last story, we're going to be taking a look at the very important upcoming elections in Bihar, what the Election Commission of India has called the mother of all elections. And it seems there is a lot to be done on that front as well as to what is going to happen in terms of whether or not we'll be seeing a clear majority or a coalition government, because it seems since last year's 2024 Lok Sabha blow to the BJP government, there is a lot of cause of concern for not just the BJP but other parties as well, with the AAP also reaching out and emerging as a new player on the field. So what happens there will be the focus of our discussion as well. These are the three stories that we'll be taking a closer look at in the debate today. We're going to be, of course, starting off with the landmark deal, the first phase of this deal that has been agreed between Israel and Hamas. And this is the result of the very important talks that have been going on in Egypt, and something that has been lauded and praised by Mr. Trump and world leaders across the board. Whether or not it actually takes into cognizance the fact that Palestinians have to be freed, that in principle their representation will be met, and the issue of Hamas and a Palestinian Authority will be resolved, are next steps, but are important to understand as to how we're going to be taking it forward. For that, we've been joined by Dr. Kamran Bokhari, who's the Senior Director, New Alliance Institute for Strategy and Policy in Washington. Thank you very much, Dr. Kamran, for being a part of the discussion. I want your take on first your views as we set a foot forward in this first phase of landmark deal between Israel and Hamas. Of course, there is celebration, there's relief, there is hope for the suffering to end. But in terms of what really has happened for the people of Gaza and Palestine, how the two years of genocide that have gone by and so much suffering has happened, how do you see this particular development? Do you think there is as much cause for celebration as there is for concern as well?
I think you're right, Sana. There is, a cause for celebration, but we don't want to. We want to keep the champagne on ice because this is very fragile. The process is very fragile. We've been here before, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So one day at a time. Definitely a big win for the President of the United States. Definitely a tremendous amount of relief for the people of Gaza. But this is a slow process. We have to see, on Monday, when we're told that at some point in time, we will see the release of the remaining hostages, both deceased and living. And then there will be a simultaneous release of the Palestinian prisoners that Hamas has demanded. So once we get through that part, then, the road ahead will look a bit more clear.
Right. There are key concerns with regards to, of course, the map lines will be drawn where there will be the Palestinian Authority and its presence in terms of its own state's governance, and what will Hamas's inclusion will look like. And these are key aspects. And so while we talk about how, of course, at the moment, ceasefire is very, very important, moving ahead, given the momentum of things, how do you see this will evolve in the future, particularly when we talk about Hamas's own disarmament and inclusion as part of the Palestinian Authority?
So I think that again, these are much latter steps. They're going to come much later in the process. I don't think that the Palestinian Authority is in any shape or form just yet
Yes.
to come in and take over. There are a lot of prerequisites for that. First being that there needs to be some form of reform within the Palestinian Authority. Mind you, that the Palestinian Authority has done a very poor job of administering the areas that are under its control and have been since the 90s in the West Bank. So, and they have not been in Gaza since 2007. So this is they're literally starting from scratch. I don't think that they're in a position just yet to do that. Then there's the big question of Hamas. And while it's clear that Hamas will not have weapons, it has to be disarmed, and Hamas will not form the next government or the next political dispensation. But then there is the question of what is to become of Hamas, what is to become of the fighters that remain, the armed fighters. Let's say that they're going to be disarmed. Okay, so they're disarmed, but then what? What will be their role? Uh, and let's say that somehow they are kept away from any political or governance activities, but then there's still a social movement. So what happens to that? So these are all questions that need to be tackled. I'm sure that this is something that the stakeholders, whether it's the Trump administration, or it is the Israeli government, or it's the Arab Muslim countries that are part of this, that are key stakeholders, are working on, but these are things that are not clear to us just yet.
Absolutely. At the core of this, of course, the issue of freeing Palestine still remains. That is, of course, what the world has been demanding. And of course, the people of Palestine have been suffering long before October 2023. And so when we talk about the establishment of a Palestinian state and something that has been demanded by the people of Palestine and many countries around the world as well, given the fact that that is, of course, a later step, but something very, very integral to peace in Gaza, to peace in Palestine, and then seeing in parallel what Israel has done recently and also the kind of rhetoric that we have seen coming in from Netanyahu saying that he will never see a Palestinian state, and the kind of attacks that still continue as the world welcomes this announcement. So, given what we've seen before in terms of what Israel has stated and done, do you think that it's going to see this through towards a free Palestine, a truly free Palestine?
I don't think so in the years to come, in the immediate years to come. Eventually, at some point in the distant future, I do see it happening because ultimately, you can't leave it in this sort of gray zone. But there's a lot that has to happen before we get there. Some of it I already mentioned on the Palestinian side. Prime Minister Netanyahu's subjective preferences aside, the reality is that the base. Let's say if the Israelis agree, and they're not agreeing at this point, and I doubt that even any future government will agree easily. But let's say they do. I don't think the ingredients are there, are the basic sort of building blocks of a Palestinian state are there on the Palestinian side. There has to be a great deal of evolution. These things take time. There are, at this point in time, two very weak political movements that claim leadership of the Palestinian people. They're both very unpopular in their own ways and in their own areas. And so we just need to see how that pans out. I think that the Palestinian state is far off. I mean, it is the more immediate thing is how do you stabilize Gaza? What is to become of the West Bank? What is to become of the president has talked about a reformed Palestinian Authority. What does that look like? Then there are, the question of the Israeli domestic political landscape. We have elections coming up next year.
Yes.
And we need to see, what happens to the current coalition. Uh, as things stand today, things are not looking good for the current government, for the current stakeholders in this current far right government. And so these are all the things that have to take shape before we can talk about a Palestinian state. I think there is a need to focus on First things first, stability, security, humanitarian relief, reconstruction, and then I think at the end of this process, will
Yeah.
come a Palestinian state, and we don't know when that will happen.
Right, absolutely. What about accountability as well? When we take a look at what has happened, this is a UN declared genocide. There have been so many war crimes, murder, torture, and the way that Israeli forces have treated not just the people of Gaza, but also the flotilla, including humanitarian aid workers, bringing in aid to the people of Gaza. There is so much wrong with what has happened in the past 2 years alone, let alone the decades before that. Who's going to hold Israel accountable for that?
Well, we have to understand that the United Nations is basically its Security Council, and the Security Council has five permanent members and 10 non-permanent members. And it's always been a gridlock. I mean, and this isn't just a Palestinian issue we're talking about. We can go back decades and pick up any issue. There's, consensus on how to move forward on something has been sort of, the rarity. The norm has been, the disagreement, the use of the veto, and so on and so forth. So I think that this issue is sensitive because if you're going to get the Israelis to agree to end the conflict, to withdraw forces, and we don't know, how long that will take. I think the accountability part becomes politically and geopolitically quite risky, if you will, from the point of view of the international community.
Right. There's also, of course, concern in terms of what Israel has done in the Middle East and the attacks at a number of countries in the recent past as well. And so we understand that there is a lot that the region also is concerned about. Of course, the Qatari Prime Minister had a huge part in these negotiations as well, but Qatar is a country that was just recently attacked by Israel as well. So when we take a look at beyond what has happened in Gaza, how the countries around this region are going to then be reacting, do you think that this can point towards a certain shift in the way that we've seen both the US and Israel nexus evolve in the years, and in the way that Arab and Muslim countries are going to be dealing with Israel?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are basically two questions you've asked. Let me attempt deal with the one about the Arab and Muslim countries
Yeah.
in the region and beyond and their relationship with Israel. Look, we have 8 countries that have signed on or are participating in this Gaza peace plan. And one of them is Pakistan. And so those 8 countries, uh, to varying degrees, will be participating in the stabilization of Gaza. There's going to be an Arab Muslim task force that will be responsible for security. It is being called the International Stabilization Force, for lack of a better term. But they will be there. What does that mean? That means that they're going to be de facto dealing with the Israeli authorities, because the Israeli authorities are not going to loosen their grip on the Gaza Strip. They may not be in occupation of the Gaza Strip physically inside, but they will control its land borders and its maritime borders for this foreseeable future. And so there will be coordination. So that is a pathway for a kind of unintended relationship between the Arab Muslim countries and Israel. So that's what I'm going to be watching for. I think that is what these Arab Muslim countries are looking at. They know it very well, and that's their mechanism for dealing with Israel in the future and preventing things like, the airstrike in Doha. As far as the U.S. is concerned, look, the president came out today and actually last night on Fox News, and he basically told his interviewer that he has told the Israeli prime minister that you can't be fighting all these wars. It's not good for you. It's not good for Israel. It's not good for the region or anybody else. So the president of the United States knows this. The issue is the engineering of how you deal with it. You don't want to, you have to, it's a delicate balancing act. How do you get Israel to do certain things and move away from this state of conflict, and at the same time balance that with the imperatives of the Arab Muslim states and the Palestinian people, who are sort of at the front line, at the receiving end of this conflict. So this is a very, very delicate process. It
Yeah.
requires really careful handling. Any misstep, any attempt towards rushing things could really throw this off course.
Right. And while Trump is making these statements, there are still questions being raised in terms of the leverage that the U.S. can use against Israel in the form of the military aid that goes to the country. Do you think that Trump will be under any pressure to make changes on that front?
Well, it depends. What is the political mood in the country? I mean, there is growing, if you will, a growing sentiment within the president's own base that is basically questioning the reason why such aid is being given. What are we getting out of it? Questions are being raised. And I think that the public mood will determine what the president will do because ultimately, look, he's a politician. And mm, poll numbers matter to him. His poll numbers aren't doing great at this point in time, or at least just before this Gaza deal. We have elections coming up next year, the midterms, and the last thing he wants is to lose the control of the House and the Senate, Congress, essentially. So he has to factor that in. How they will translate remains to be seen. I mean, it just depends on what the critical mass is, because there are a number of voices. This isn't sort of like if you will, a monolithic sentiment. There are nuances. There are questions over, aid to Israel, and there are those who are saying, "Hey, we can't." We do need to sort of rationalize this, but we can't abandon Israel. So this isn't sort of black and white. And I think the president will have to factor that in, and he is, and it will determine. I mean, in other words, public sentiment will shape
Yeah.
what the president will do moving forward.
Do you think there's a Nobel Peace Prize waiting for the U.S. president?
Oh, I don't know. The president has made it no secret that he wants one. Um, I I couldn't tell you. It's beyond sort of the purview of my forecasting capabilities.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kamran Bokhari, for joining us and being a part of the debate today. We talked about the very important first phase of a landmark deal that has been agreed between Israel and Hamas. And while that is welcome, and we're hoping that this is something that will be approved by the Israel cabinet as well, there are a lot of concerns as to how that is going to pan out and what is going to be implemented. And then, of course, larger concerns, which are something that will come later, but very, very important to peace in Gaza and to the people of Palestine to see what they've been asking for, rightfully so, for so many years. And that is a free Palestine and a free Palestinian state. And this is something that we hope that we see in the future. But for now, this is welcome that there is a ceasefire that is going to be coming very soon, and that the people of Gaza will see an end to their suffering, at least for now, in a prisoner exchange, which is very much needed, and of course humanitarian aid within the region so that the people can be helped. Whether or not that happens, whether or not Israel actually sticks to the deal, is something that remains to be seen. But it seems, with the kind of statements that we've seen coming in from Mr. Trump and other world leaders, that this is something to celebrate at the moment. Of course, there's cautious optimism aligned with it, but how it evolves in the future is a step for a later time. We're now going to be taking a look at our next story that takes a look at the very important gold price that has seen a huge surge, $4,000 per ounce. And this is a very important mark that has been crossed, something that affects not just the U.S., but the entire world community. And there are concerns as to how exactly we're going to be moving forward with this discussion, not just within the U.S., but in the entire international community, taking a look at where the investors are going to go, what is it about the dollar confidence that is being shaken, and how exactly to move forward in a world which has a lot of geopolitical concerns, particularly sanctions on Russia and a lot of other drivers that have affected this growth. For that, let us welcome Dr. Aima. Mehdi is a senior economist and joined us online. Thank you, Dr. Aima, for being part of the debate. I'd like your take on, when we take a look at this surge, how unprecedented do you think this is, given the fact that so many of the drivers that, of course, push for gold prices to rise, almost all of them seem to be happening?
Thank you. Thank you, Sana. Thank you for having me over. And thank you for raising such a timely question. Well, gold has been in spotlight since, let's say, 2003, 2004, and especially from 2010. Recently, we've seen, and like yesterday, we've seen highest rise in gold price in India. In the short term, where we know that all our, I mean, India is celebrating the Diwali festival, and it is a religious and a festival sort of a thing for them to be buying a lot of gold on personal level. So, whenever, if you see time year on year, you'll see whenever Diwali approaches, gold purchasing, gold demand increases domestically, and in the Gulf region where there are lots of Indians, also the US and the UK, and that goes up. That's the short run thing. Coming to the long term thing, we know that gold is priced globally. Gold is priced in US dollars, and whenever the dollar becomes a bit weaker, gold price goes up, and vice versa. However, the other geopolitical thing or the global thing that I want to mention here is we're all hearing this news a lot that there's going to be BRICS. There is a BRICS alliance. BRICS alliance is growing. However, now there's increasing noise in the market that BRICS is going to launch its own currency, and that will be backed by gold and not dollars. So Russia and China have 20% of the world's gold reserves, and they have been massively buying gold. And because they've been buying gold a lot, the demand has been increasing, and with increase in demand, the prices are going up because of the market dynamics. Also, recently there has been a lot of uncertainty in the market. Global stock markets have been up and down, swinging behavior, and that has also brought a lot of investors to the safe haven which gold provides, because gold has store value, gold has a lot of industrial value, gold has a lot of value in all the terms possible. So people, even big companies, investment houses have been doing that. The third thing that we're really seeing is the upheaval and downheaval of stuff in the Middle East, and because it's been so uncertain, people don't want to, or businesses even don't want to invest uh, in like stocks. They don't want to invest in fixed income because interest rates have been going up and down, and there's a lot of pressure about global inflation, looking at things. So which is why there's a huge demand of gold, i.e., rise in gold prices.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's the
I'm
reason.
when we take right when we take a look at what has happened in terms of the confidence in dollars, we've seen that there was a discussion in the recent past as well as to how there may be alternative ways of different currencies, especially within the region, that can be used instead of the dollar. Do you think this is a global sentiment that seems to be catching on?
It is definitely a global sentiment. One, because Russia is facing a lot of sanctions. Two, Iran had a lot of sanctions. There have been sanctions in a lot of countries. Also, people's sentiment, even on individual level, people have been completely polarized by the way the whole incident took place in the Middle East, um, and then how it grew. It has been coming on media, so people have extreme polarized thoughts and sentiments, and people have been
But
growing
but Aima,
apart
I
in terms
want
of
to
opinions.
understand. I want to understand though, practically speaking, what are your concerns when we talk about an alternative to the dollar economy?
An alternative, one thing is that global trade and trade flows and supply chains are going to be affected, and
Okay.
for clear reasons. If someone is importing something and that country doesn't, or that supplier doesn't want to have a trade in dollars, and they want to have a barter in terms of gold, in terms of crypto, like we get to crypto, but for example in gold or another currency, there's no surety, or the surety level is not the same as dollar is a very easy currency. The Swift, everybody knows about the Swift system, the international payment system that operates from the US. So there is news about a parallel system, and China is actually executing that parallel system, but it's not widely used. So when we're talking about trade and ease of trade, the issue is in terms of payment and the ease of payment systems and transactions. The Swift system that operates, and all the payments transaction system that operate from the US are secure. They're quite quick. That's why they're called Swift. And they're easy. So one thing is, when payment system stops, there'll be reluctance in providing, in supplying, and fulfilling orders. So there's going to be disruption there. The second thing is, there's going to be more polarity, because US in no way wants this BRICS currency to come into being. So there's going to be a lot of polarity there. There are going to be more tariffs. US is already looking into the tariff war. There are going to be more tariffs, and there's going to be divide, which of course, we don't want that divide. We want everybody to have peace, and we want our further generations to flourish, and we also want to flourish ourselves. So right now, one of the reasons for gold price to go up is also because there are tariffs, and there's supply chain disruption, and tariffs that were announced by Mr. Trump have been one of the major reasons for gold prices to go up, actually. So, we're looking at it and it's not looking very bright. And also, on a personal level, I wouldn't just say that, since gold prices are going up, you should blindly go and start investing in gold. So that's one disclaimer. The thing is that you'll see a lot of volatility in gold.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of volatility in gold price. So you have to be very cautious on that side.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned that because I wanted your take on how do you see this trajectory flowing in the recent months and years to come, because there are a lot of concerns in terms of the aspects that you have mentioned as well as to them continuing. It doesn't seem like any of that is going to change anytime soon. Trump seems very, very keen on his tariffs plan. Of course, there are sanctions that continue on Russia, and the concerns around the dollar are also growing. And so while we take a look at all of these measures, then do you think that this will be a trajectory that we'll keep on seeing, or do you think that there can be a stop to it?
In the last 10 years, we've been seeing an upward trajectory. And I mean, this trajectory will continue, but I don't know at what momentum, at what rate. It could be like a slow increase, because if you see, China and Russia have accumulated, they have their central banks have the world's largest reserves of gold. So they have 20% accumulated together in the BRICS region, just the BRICS region, leaving US and UK behind. The UK has the biggest gold vault and gemstones vault, but that doesn't back the currency. The aim for BRICS countries to have big gold reserves is different. They want a new currency that is backed by gold. I do say, and I will continue to say this, that gold prices will increase because the supply of gold is still finite, and the amount of gold that we're extracting from the earth is still finite, but the demand is infinite. So there will definitely be an increase in gold price. However, I don't know at what rate. It might be a falling rate, it might be a plateau. I can't be sure about that. But definitely an
Right.
increase, definitely an increase.
Right, absolutely. I know you've already given us a warning, Ima, but I want your take on what do you think our viewers should be doing at the moment, the random public as well, and also the investors really taking a look at where these prices are going. What should we be doing?
Like, I mean, I'm not into active investment research at the moment, but the thing is, you never buy when it's at an all-time high.
Yeah.
But when it comes a bit down, and if you have some free cash, why not invest in gold? Definitely, but not you don't buy at all-time high. You do the reverse when it's an all-time high. That's what I'll say.
But it seems like it's going to be on the rise.
Yes, yes, it's definitely, like I mentioned, the supply of gold is definitely very finite. Well, demand is infinite. Who doesn't love gold? So it will be on the rise, looking at the market demand and supply.
Absolutely. When we also take a look at what is happening within the US, how much of the internal US dynamics do you think are getting affected by this surge as well? Like you mentioned, the tariffs, of course, they're affecting American goods too. But in terms of the public opinion, do you think that this is going to be a cause of concern for Mr. Trump?
Well, I hope Mr. Trump has realized by now that his idea of an inward economy is not very practical. So his idea was that all U.S. citizens do not have jobs, and we're going to get rid of the migrants, and we're going to stop imports, and we're going to produce everything locally, and a very inward economy. But the world doesn't operate like that, because we operate on specialized skills. That's our core benefit. And if you start producing everything at home, at the end, you wouldn't have enough time to do anything else because you don't have the skill and you're not specialized to do so. So, what this has entailed is supply disruption in the US economy. Business investors in the US who had been reaping a lot of profits in the past 50, 60, 70 years, have seen a shortfall in their own profits and their revenues and businesses. So what has actually happened in the US employment rate? Unemployment rate has increased. Their supply chain is disrupted. They have cost of living is increasing over there because people have to increase their expenditure to make ends meet. So all this has led to a downward pressure on the US dollar. And as the US dollar's demand goes down, what exactly is happening? It's happening that the dollar is weakening, and the price of gold, for example, is increasing, or people are losing their purchasing power in economic terms, which means, like, if they had $100 previously, they would be able to buy 10 goods. Now probably they're being able to buy only eight goods. So this is the type of scenario that US citizens are facing right now. And I don't know how much of it is known by Mr. Trump, or how aware
Yeah.
he is, but policy wise, I don't see him, stopping at any point. He is continuing in the same trajectory, and if this continues, of course, and if BRICS becomes stronger, in the next 5 to 7 years, we'll see a new currency at least coming in. Even if it's not widely used, it will be in the
Yeah.
market. We'll have different ways of payments. We'll see, like everything getting diffused. US power will be more diffused and it's not going to increase the way it's
Right.
heading forward.
Right, and Ima, what does this gold surge mean for growing economies like Pakistan, not just for the people in the country as well, but also in terms of businesses that want to come in and invest?
That's a very interesting question. It's not very positive for Pakistan because most of the payments that we have to do um, are in terms of US dollars. Um, we also have this issue in terms of our reserves. If the trade currency changes, or like our reserves are so low, something happens, we have to pay back IMF. We don't have enough balance of payment. We don't have reserves. I don't know. I don't know how the country is steering forward, staring ahead. Really, we see that stock markets are going perhaps up. That's fine. We don't have enough in crypto, which is also fine because it's such an opaque area, and we don't have any backing to kind of say that this is the country's, because the country's wealth is actually calculated in how much reserve the state bank or the central bank has, and we don't have any, which is not good, and we should have more. So
Yeah.
that's our
Ima, you're
current
painting.
situation.
Ima, you're painting a grim picture. Should we be worried?
I don't think Pakistan should worry anymore. I think Pakistanis generally have enough to worry about, but I do think that the think tanks and the government, the Prime Minister, the Department of Trade, Finance, Business, they should all be worried to make things better, actually.
All right, thank
But
you,
on the
Dr.
flip
Ima
side,
Mehdi.
you're
Yeah.
welcome. I
Okay,
was
go
just gonna,
ahead. Would love to hear the flip
I was
side.
just, I was just gonna say on the flip side, Russia and China and most of the BRICS countries are on our side. So if we start trading with China, import, export, whatever, and if it's
Yeah.
not in dollars, then it's better. We'll have an alternate sort of payment system. Also, we owe a lot to China. We might be able to, compensate in that way. So, and we are also, we're quite loved by the BRICS countries, so which we are in a good place in that term. So we'll be fine. We'll be
Great.
safe. We won't be
Great.
independent, but we'll be safe.
Great, thanks a lot. On that note, we're going to end. You give us hope. Thank you, Dr. Aima Mehdi, for
Thank
joining
you.
us and being a part of the debate. There are, of course, a lot of concerns to the world economy as to where gold prices are heading, but there is a lot that countries like Pakistan can do in order to move ahead in the right direction and look for alternate options. How soon we're going to be seeing that happening remains to be seen, but it is an alternative step that can be considered and may be something that we'll see on the horizon very soon. For now, it seems that gold has crossed a very important mark and it's an all-time high. So there is a lot of concern as to what people will do. But as for now, the advice to our viewers would be not to just go ahead and buy lots of gold. That doesn't seem to be the right option. Wait to see what happens. But whether or not there will be a dip seems to be unlikely. Our next story is going to take a look at what is happening in India and the upcoming elections in Bihar, called the mother of all elections by the Indian Election Commission. Why that is so, of course, it's an extremely important part of the country, and there seems to be a lot of debate as to who it is that's going to come forward. Since the 2024 Lok Sabha defeat of a majority by the BJP, there is a lot of discussion as to how this will pan out in the regions like Bihar as well, and what really is going to be the move forward for the opposition parties and then other parties like the AAP. For this, we've been joined by Sanjay Kapoor, who's an editor, Hardnews magazine in India. Thank you very much, Mr. Sanjay, for joining us and being a part of today's debate. I'd like your take on first, why do you think these elections are so important? Why are the Bihar elections being looked at so closely by not just the governments and the parties of India, but also the people at large?
Yeah, good. Thank you for inviting me to speak here. I think Bihar and Uttar Pradesh are two states that really matter, primarily because BJP is a party which is largely concentrating on the Hindi-speaking areas, and Bihar is one state where you have, I think, the mix of all the possible caste and communal combinations which are really important for the party. and that is why there's been a great amount of expectation that is built around that. If the BJP manages to lose this, Bihar, the fear it will have an implication also in the parliament election whenever they take place in the future. Although in 2024 you had the last parliament election, so 5 years from now you'll have it. So it's still far away, but it has implications for here. Then subsequently, you also have elections in 2027 in UP. So it will have some kind of a multiplier effect, which will BJP might find it very difficult to contain.
Right, Mr. Kapoor, there is also, of course, concern as to who then will be the likely emerging party out of these elections. And there seems to be chances more of a coalition, and there is the India bloc as well. But when we take a look at what happened in last year, 2024 Lok Sabha elections as well, do you think that this time around too the BJP should be prepared to not win a clear majority?
Having, there is a great amount of expectation that the opposition parties might do well, but going by the track record, and if you speak with people from Bihar, you will get a sense that the BJP-led NDA is not too badly off as it is made out to be, primarily because there is a section of the upper caste population which believes that if Mr. Tejasvi Yadav, which is is spearheading the opposition parties, if it comes to power, their condition is going to worsen, or they will have a tough time getting any kind of justice from the institutions that exist in the state. So they've had some experience in the past when Lalu Prasad Yadav was leading the party, that was the Janta Dal, and they fear that the same forces will come in and cause great amount of harm. The only thing that could probably salvage that impression is the Congress party managed to get far more seats than they have been getting of late. Last time they won about seven odd, which is a shame actually for all the money and effort they put in. But the Vote Adhikar Yatra that they did, the movement to somehow preserve or save your vote that they have been leading,
Yeah.
the Congress party, if they manage to strike a chord with the voters in the state, they may be in a position to get more seats in the state and give a different complexion to the coalition government, which will be formed either ways, either by the Congress party led UPA, or the other formation which is also trying to snap at the heels of each other.
Right. What is the voter sentiment like at the moment? What are the voters being swayed by? Are they going to be swayed by what the ideology is being put forward by parties like the BJP? Are they going to be swayed by promises of a better future? Or are they loyalists to certain parties?
So the jury is still out as to who's going to really win in Bihar. It has been a real toss-up. Ideologically, I don't think there is a great amount of difference between the parties which are on the left or the right in a certain way, because this is a very caste-driven
Yeah.
state. People vote according to caste. As I said earlier, you could have the upper caste rallying around the BJP. If the Congress looks better, they might be able to cut into the upper caste vote, but invariably it has not really happened. And most of the backward castes, that is the Yadavs and the others, non-Kurmi, Kurmi is another caste which is, I think, people in Pakistan would probably be aware of that. They are not they have not been voting for the Congress-led UPA or Tejasvi other-led party. They will go for something that protects them from the might of the Yadavs. Yadav is a very muscular caste which normally votes for Tejasvi Yadav and the Yadav-based parties, and the all the other caste groupings fear their coming to power, as I stated earlier. So that is how it is looking at the
Right.
moment.
Right. What about the AAP, who have announced that they're going to be contesting all 243 seats? And so that is also something really important in terms of them not joining the India bloc and going forward with fighting these elections independently. Do they have a
You're
chance?
talking about you're talking about OVC.
The Aam Aadmi Party.
Obviously, Aam Aadmi Party. Aam Aadmi Party is, I think, a very minor force. I don't think it will really make much of an impact. They will contest, yes, they will contest. So would another party which will contest, which is supposed to take away the support the minorities tend to provide to Tejasvi Yadav in the Congress party. So both of them are banking on some kind of support they will take away from the minorities, away towards somebody or the other. So they're considered to be spoilers because they will end up supporting the BJP in some ways. That is a reputation that they have. So I don't think they'll
Right.
make much of an impact. But anyways, even 1%, 2% votes, if they take away, it will hurt the prospects of the
Okay.
Congress Party's attempt to stop the BJP from coming to power.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Sanjay Kapoor, for joining us and sharing your views.
Thank you so
What
much
happens
for
in
asking.
the Bihar elections remains to be seen, but there is a lot that is at stake for the BJP government, and we'll know soon once the polls happen and, of course, the voters go ahead and cast their ballot papers. This is going to be an important sign of the BJP's current success and position in the country, and will guide, of course, the future of the parliament as well. Here's the crux of the debate today. There is a lot of concern and celebration with regards to the announcement of the first phase of a landmark deal between Israel and Hamas that has been agreed in Egypt. There's only the Israeli cabinet approval that awaits, and after that, we're going to be seeing an immediate ceasefire, prisoner exchange, and humanitarian aid being delivered to the people of Gaza, which is a very, very welcome step. But there needs to be eyes still on the people of Palestine to move ahead with a truly free Palestinian state. Next, of course, we talked about the very important aspect of the gold surge. This is something that is affecting all of the countries in the international community, and of course puts into question where the investments are going to take place and how different countries are going to interact with each other, and whether or not a truly alternative to a non-Western and a non-dollar economy can truly emerge, and that's something that remains to be seen. And lastly, Bihar elections are on the horizon in India, an important contest of the BJP's popularity within India and what lies ahead for Modi's government. All of this remains to be seen, but we'll be here to talk about it. But that's all that we have from the debate today. We'll now see you tomorrow.